So, hi everybody. Yes, I am a recovering advertiser. I did leave the ad business as a planner 10 years ago to start swimming in the waters of big social data. And so I'm going to talk today about the practical aspects of big social data and give an example of some of the work we've been doing in the US, applying market research techniques and all the skills I learned in the first half of my life as a market researcher to big social data. At MotiveQuest, what we do is we've taken sort of smart researchy type people and anthropologists and built a anthropological style type of software that allows us essentially to lay a digital blanket over these giant big data sets and begin to analyze the data through the kind of frameworks that we would have applied in the market research space, things like segmentations and indexing and tracking and all the stuff that we're used to from our old world. We've tried to build into the software. And we've taken a behavioral science approach where we're looking beneath the what is going on, what are people saying, where are they saying it, to try and dig a bit deeper into the data to understand why are they talking about those things, because often we find the why of it all is the bit that drives sales and share out the other end. So, and as Ray said, we work with all sorts of big clients in the USA here doing that on a daily basis. So we've now got quite a bit of experience sort of actually applying those techniques to big social data. So let me talk about the case I'm going to share. This is for a large cellular service provider in the US named Sprint. For those that aren't in the US, you know, there are a number of different cellular service providers here, and that's one of the big four. And we're going to talk about a framework that we built, an approach to analyzing the data called the brand advocacy matrix or brand advocacy metric. And the brand advocacy metric came from some analysis we did back in 2006 with Northwestern University here in the States, where we looked at all the different things we were measuring at the time in big social data. We looked at things like buzz and sentiment and influencers and all these different things we were able to count to see if any of them related to sales and share. And we found that actually most of the things we were counting back in 2006 really didn't relate very well to sales and share. But there was an algorithm we developed that was measuring people's net recommendations, so a sort of online net promoter score effectively, where we were linguistically not measuring what people said they were going to recommend, but the actual recommendations that were going on. And we found that that's a very robust predictive metric. It typically predicts the shift in sales and share about a month in advance. And you can see a chart up here for forward. You probably can't see it unless you've got very good eyesight, but the line at the top is forward focus share of market. The line on the bottom is forward focus share of advocacy. And the two lines are shifted by a month to line up. But effectively, this advocacy change will predict the share change about 96% of the time. The one on the right is liquor brands, 6 different liquor brands against Nielsen data. And so we find this advocacy approach is very useful. A lot of what we do these days is try and work out what are the advocates saying, why are they saying it, are there rational drivers, emotional drivers, social drivers, and then by understanding that, build a sort of anthropological model that can explain how that society operates. So we're going to now go into the cellular society, and if you think about it, back in the old days of anthropology, you'd go to the Amazon jungle and you'd sort of look at that tribe and say, how does this tribe operate, how do they work? We did the same thing here in the cellular category. Okay, so rewind the clock to 2009. And in 2009 was a pretty momentous year in the US for cellular because that was the year the iPhone launched. And what happened as a result of that launch is Sprint, our client in yellow, who didn't have the iPhone, was being dramatically beaten up. Their churn, which is an industry metric for the number of customers they were losing, was twice the industry average, and that was translating into losing about 500,000 clients a quarter versus AT&T and Blue, who were gaining 2 million clients a quarter, and Verizon over here, who had a big campaign around their coverage that was gaining about 1 million clients a quarter. So it was a pretty dramatic time, and Sprint had done a lot of market research when we came along. They'd done a lot of traditional research looking at communications messaging. They'd done lots of conjoint analysis on pricing. They tested lots of different promotions. But none of the activities they were doing were able to change this churn, this high churn and this share loss. So when we came along, the first thing we did is we laid our big digital blanket over all the conversations in the cellular service category among people in forums, in news groups, in Facebook, in Twitter, and we tried to understand, what's going on in the category. So we looked at people that were former Sprint customers. Why were they leaving Sprint? We looked at people that were advocates in the category, because we know that advocacy metric matters. We to try to understand what makes somebody an advocate, a recommender of a cellular service. And we also looked at people that were on the fence, people that were coming to the community asking what to do, where to go. Perhaps not surprisingly, when we looked at those Sprint customers, I've gone one slide too many, let's see if I can go back. There we go. We looked at those Sprint customers, we found that the reason they were leaving Sprint was models, the iPhone, features, the iPhone store and the iTunes service, and coverage, which was where Verizon was very advantaged. They had a big campaign about how much better their coverage was. Perhaps more interestingly, when we laid the digital blanket over the advocacy conversations, what we found is that those things were much less important. And the advocates for a cellular service provider were talking about, funnily enough, the customer service. And one of the reasons when we dug into that was there's been a fundamental shift in the marketplace for phones. Really, these days, you're not buying a phone as a communications device anymore. You're buying a phone as a handheld computer. And when you're buying a handheld computer, you really need a lot more help than you used to do in the old days to help you work out what sort of handheld computer should you buy and how to go about that. And the companies that were doing a good job of dealing with that were the ones that were getting advocacy. And that advocacy, when it was there, actually was important because it was glue. So this person at T-Mobile was talking about they were swooning over an iPhone and wanted to buy one, but they've had a good relationship with T-Mobile. They've treated them well. And so they're going to wait and hold off for the G1. And when they did wait for the G1, they were happy they did. So not only is advocacy a reason to choose and recommend, it's a reason to stick around. When we looked at Sprint on these dimensions to see where they stacked up, Sprint is the sorry yellow line here. We saw that in coverage they were number 4, in models they were number 3, but they really couldn't do anything about the fact they didn't have an iPhone. And in customer service they were way below the market there at the bottom of the pile. When we explored what they might do to fix the problem, and we talked to them, really, it was a difficult situation. To get the iPhone was going to take them 2 years, so there was not much they could do there in the short term. To improve their coverage is billions of dollars of infrastructure, and again, 2 to 3 years to improve their infrastructure. So they were left with this area of customer service as really the only area that they could try and improve. But how to do that? So the next thing we did is we did an analysis actually across 12 different categories to look linguistically at how people talk about great customer service. We said we don't just want to think about customer service in the cellular category. We want to understand customer service much more broadly. And so we were able linguistically to look at all the ways people talk about great service, to look at the brands they talk about, and boil that down to the 10 dimensions that customers in the marketplace these days were talking about that really mattered for great customer service. And then we were able to overlay that in a quantitative fashion on the cellular service category to see of those things that we know matter generally about service, which ones matter the most in cellular. And we found, in line with our earlier advocacy finding, that knowledgeability was top of the pile, that I'm buying a handheld computer, I need somebody that knows what they're talking about. And the second thing was proactivity. Don't just sell me something and leave me alone. I need engagement along the road. And actually that engagement is good because there's all sorts of features and plans and extra things you can sell me if you engage with me properly. So we went down very proud of ourselves to the client and presented our findings to the marketing group, and we said, who here is from customer service? And of course, not a peep. Nobody was in the room from customer service. So we actually had to go and run down the corridor and talk to the CMO and talk to the CEO and get the customer service people involved. And what happened was very interesting. We ended up with a cross-functional team. Originally, we'd come in with the agency as a partner, with Euro. And we ended up with a cross-functional team where the agency was helping the HR people rewrite the scripts that the customer service people were using. We helped them rewrite their policies for hiring and for retention of customer service people and incentives. We worked with the technology team to get knowledge kiosks into the stores that could provide that knowledge at storefront and help train the employees in the stores about how to sell a smartphone instead of a cell phone. And then only when all of that other stuff was done did they mount the ad campaign on top of it to tell people about this new customer service. And the results were quite dramatic over a 5-quarter period. So from Q309 to Q1 2011, the net customer accounts for Sprint moved from losing 500,000 customers a quarter to gaining 1.1 million customers a quarter. That's a net shift of about $133 million. The churn rate dropped down to the industry average, and they actually won a J.D. Power Award for customer service. And so I like this case because I think it's a very dramatic example of how you can, by listening to your customers through big social data, we didn't ask a single question in this piece of research, actually derive some fairly powerful insights that can have a dramatic business impact. And one of the other nice things is now, of course, we can move forward and track those things. So now we know what are the things that matter, that actually drive behavior in the category. We can follow those on a quarterly or a monthly basis and help Sprint see, are they optimizing their expenditure in marketing well? Are they doing a good job? Are they improving around these different attributes?